Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Josh, and this is Catholic Cop. Have you all ever had that friend that says, look, Bible boy, I know that you're Christian. You have 10 minutes to prove to me that God is real. You have 10 minutes. Now, if you're like most people, you know that it's true. You believe that it's true, but you don't have the tools. No one's ever told you how to prove that point. Well, if that's the case for you, this video is for you. What I'm going to do here is take everything that I've learned from being a criminal detective and applying it to being a Christian detective. I'm applying it to my Christian faith to prove that my Christian faith is true, my Catholic faith is true. And I'm going to do that for all my videos here on this channel. I'm going to take a variety of topics and just dissect them. Just make a case on these things and just see where the truth leads us. So here we are. For the proof that God exists, I'm going to go to St. Thomas Aquinas. He has 5 proofs of God's existence. 5 proofs of God's existence. This is really easy to remember. So the first one is the law of motion. Now we all know that science proves that an object in motion stays in motion, but if there is motion, there has to be a first mover of motion. So let me give you an example. We all know that the planets are all orbiting around one another, orbiting around the sun, and for that to happen, there has to be movement. There's movement of the planets, so there has to be a mover of those planets. Okay, so the first point of the existence of God is motion. For there to be motion, there has to be an initial mover of motion. The first mover of motion is God. Now for the second proof of God's existence, we're going to go to the matter of cause. The entire universe was caused by something. Okay, it didn't create itself. So one of the examples I usually give to my confirmation kids when I teach confirmation is I give them a just clear box with nothing inside of it. And I hand it to one of my students and I say, all right, what I want you to do is take this box and everything that's contained within it and make a single leaf, just one leaf from a tree, given the materials in this clear box. Now, obviously, as you know, nothing's going to be done. Okay? You can't make something from nothing. And the simple fact that there is everything in the world means there had to be a creator. Now, a lot of people go to the analogy of a painter. Okay, if you see a painting on the wall, you don't automatically assume that the painting just magically appeared. If there's a painting, you have to assume that there's a painter that created the painting. And the same is true for the existence of God. The simple fact that there is a cause in the earth and the planets and the solar system, okay, that initial cause had to be caused by something. It didn't create itself from nothing. And that first cause was God. The third existence of God proof comes from the point of contingency. Everything in the universe is contingent on something else for its survival. Okay, you think about the smallest thing like a blade of grass. Even a blade of grass can't exist on its own. It requires sunlight. It requires water for that blade of grass to exist. You move up in the hierarchy. You have animals. And animals also, if they're herbivores, they're going to feed on that grass for its own survival. Water, sunlight. So everything is contingent on something. And you yourselves, you can't survive on your own. You require food, water, shelter, all the basic necessities of life. And that means you're contingent on something. Everything in the whole world is contingent on something for its own survival. And that dependency, that contingency on everything has to be God, because he provides all of those things, and we didn't provide any of them for ourselves. The next point is the point of perfection or morality. So in the world, there's always these different degrees of perfection, from really, really good at something to really, really poor at something. Now, if there's different degrees of perfection, then there's different degrees of perfect morality as well. Now, one thing that's unique to every human being is that we all have this thing called a conscience. Now, no one knows where this conscience comes from. We know that taking a knife and stabbing a newborn baby is wrong. That's murder. Yeah, taking a knife and stabbing anybody is murder, and we know that that's wrong. And we don't need laws to tell us that. We just know that it's wrong because it's written on our conscience. Now, where did that conscience come from? It came from God. Okay? It's nothing that had to be taught to any of us. It's just something written on us. Now, going back to my different degrees of perfection. Now, if there's different degrees of perfection, you say you have a Major League Baseball player that's really good at baseball. And then you have somebody like me that used to play when I was younger, but I never got good enough to become a pro. Okay, there's those different degrees of perfection. Now, if there's different degrees of perfection, that means there has to be something that is the perfect source of perfection. You know, something by which all other sources of perfection are judged. Let's go to the saints for a second. You know, you have Saint Padre Pio, Saint John Vianney, you know, these all-star, rock star saints that did crazy, awesome things throughout their lives. And yet they fell short of perfection. They were still sinful people, just like you and I, but they were at a very high degree of perfection. So if that's a human model of how close you can get to perfection, then there has to be perfect. And that came in the person of Jesus, who was born without sin and maintained an entire life without committing sin. Okay? So if there's different degrees of perfection, there has to be a perfect model by which all other models are judged by. And that's the proof of God, that for there to be a God, for there to be different degrees of perfection, there has to be a perfect by which everything else is judged. And finally, order. Okay? The fifth proof of God's existence comes by the way of order. The order of the universe, the order of the world. You know, the correct amount of oxygen to carbon dioxide in the air. If it was off by 1%, science tells us if it was off by 1% in either way, it would not be enough to sustain life. The amount of gravity in the world, you know, this perfect order that makes planet Earth unique. Okay, that perfect order, it's unfathomable. Nobody can create that. No human being can create inside of a glass jar the same thing that we have in the solar system. So since there's a perfect order in the universe, there had to be a perfect creator to maintain that perfect order. And that perfect creator is God. Okay, guys, so that's the 5 proofs of God's existence brought to us by St. Thomas Aquinas. And just to recap real quick, so we got them all. The first one is the proof of motion. The second one's by proof of cause. The third is the proof of contingency. Fourth is the proof of perfection. And finally, the fifth is the proof contained within the natural order of the world. So I hope you all like that. This was part 1 of a 3-part series. Part 1 is going to be proof of God's existence. Part 2 is going to be proof of the historicity of Jesus. So we're going to be proving that Jesus was a living, breathing human being, God incarnate. And for that, it's going to be actually kind of cool. We're not going to cite anything from the Bible. All of our sources are going to be extra biblical, meaning it's going to be from writers that did not write in the Bible, the secular world that wrote about Jesus. and wrote about his life, wrote about his followers, right around within the first 100 years of Christianity. Just so our atheists, our agnostics, people that just question that if Jesus was a real person. So that's going to be for you guys. And then finally, part 3 is going to be the proof of the resurrection. So that's kind of the crux of Christianity, right? So what I'm going to have you do is like these videos, subscribe to them, turn on your notifications. That way you get all these updates as I push them out. This is a 3-part series. And yeah, send in your comments. Send me what you want content about. What topics have you been scratching your head about that you want answers for? And we'll dive into it. All right, thanks, guys. Have a blessed week.